good afternoon, officially, everyone. It is so wonderful that you all joined us. Welcome to the Ontario Innovation Expo panel discussion. I am Mickey Kempo. I am the Innovation Expo manager and a program manager at Innovation Guelph. And Innovation Guelph is a nonprofit regional innovation center that works with entrepreneurs and founders at all stages as they start, grow, and thrive by providing connections and mentorship workshops and guidance throughout many different stages. We'll throw a link down below in the chat, so if you're interested in finding more about Innovation Guelph, you can visit the site. But today I get the honor and the privilege of being the moderator of this fantastic panel. The panel is called Entrepreneurial Mixology: What Happens When You Mix Passion with Grit and Resiliency. And today we're going to hear from the panelists, these founders here who will share their own stories of how being an entrepreneur can produce the most delicious recipes for growing a business with the right combination of passion, grit, and resiliency. So a little bit about the ingredients. Passion is the fuel that entrepreneurs need to keep going. To have grit means that you have the courage and the strength to show your character. It allows you to work incredibly hard on your goals and follow through with your commitments even when faced with adversity. Resilience is about thinking or rethinking the way that you see struggles and setbacks and viewing them as catalysts instead of threats to be avoided. So today's panelists each have unique views and experiences, and they're going to share their stories here with you today. They're going to take you on about 7 or 8 minute journey, a little story into their experience. They're going to skip over some of the normal intro details. You can read their full bios on the link that's going to be provided in the chat box below. And today's panel is all about the communication and connection between entrepreneurs and how we can use their experiences to make our own lives a little bit more tasty. So please join me in saying a quick hello to Peter Katz. Peter is a Juno Award and Canadian Screen Award nominated singer-songwriter and one of Canada's most in-demand speakers. He has been described as many as Thunderbolt for the soul, drawing a direct correlation between moments of greatest discomfort in his own life journey to the greatest moments of discovery, growth, and opportunity. We have Sonia Denton, the founder and CEO of We Distill, a mobile platform where you share your values and create your own community of like-minded and brands that reward you for being you. Sonia knows the power of community as it was helping her through past mental health struggles. And then Tarek Haddad Tarek was a Syrian refugee and is now living his new life with his entrepreneurial family in Canada's East Coast. He is the founder and the CEO of Peace by Chocolate, which are delicious chocolates, by the way, and they're made with love in Nova Scotia. So thank you so much to all of you for joining us here today. I'm so happy to have you here and joining in this discussion with everyone, and I really hope we get to some great discussion afterwards as well. Let's get started. So Peter, I'm going to hand things over to you.
All right. Hi, everybody. Happy lunchtime. I was going to say good afternoon, good morning. We're right on the cusp there. So nice to be with all of you. And I just love this topic of resiliency and grit and passion, and certainly those have been really important ingredients in my life, and they've also been some of the greatest teachers in my life. And I was thinking, when I was talking with Mickey in preparation for this session about what story I could share, and I wanted to not tell any of the stories that I'm going to be sharing as part of my keynote. So I thought I would talk about a moment in time that we're all quite familiar with, which was March 2020. And we all have our different stories of how our resilience and our passion and our grit was required in that time. But I on March 12th, 2020, I gave a keynote to RBC, and I was on right after lunch. And right before my keynote, normally I get like a nice introduction, but the introduction before my keynote was the woman informing everybody in the audience that there had been a suspected COVID case on the floor that all of these business analysts worked on, and that they all had legally she had to let them know in case they wanted to go home. And there was just 100 people sort of wide-eyed, and they had these giant gallon jugs of sanitizer on everybody's in the middle of everybody's desk, and they or table, and they all just like lathered themselves in sanitizer. And I realized that that things were going to be very different moving forward, as somebody whose entire business is built on in-person events, whether that's playing concerts, giving keynotes. I do youth mentoring work. All of those things were completely dependent on me being in human form with people up until that point. So what happened over the next week or so was every single thing that I had in my calendar was deleted, and I was sort of in this state of shock, as many of us were. Of course, I want to underline that people were dying. There was much suffering that was worse than mine, but nevertheless, in my own little world, I was faced with this very real, just what am I going to do? And I've sort of developed this deep survival instinct in my life. I moved out very young. I was on my own at 16, and I just kind of go into this mode of I'm going to figure this out. And that was certainly amplified through years of touring and showing up in venues where there's like questionable sound systems or questionable lighting or questionable audience members, and just figuring out like how does the show go on every night. So through my years of touring, I would literally tour with a backpack with some little lights in it. I'd have a PA in the back of the car, so if ever I showed up in a location where things were a bit sketchy, I could still create the show. So I sort of have developed this sense of, okay, I can figure anything out. And that sense was very much needed in March 2020. And so I bought this camera that I'm looking into. I didn't know anything about live streaming or any of the technologies. But what I did have in that moment was this very clear instinct. And my instinct was this. I said, okay, I'm going to try to make a living now looking into a camera. Like I just right away I was like, okay, I need to rethink what I'm doing. And I immediately had this instinct that I don't want to create a lesser version of a keynote. I want to create a different version of a keynote. It's like, when they invented movies, they didn't just put a camera in a theater and film a play, because that's just like a lesser version of a play. But when they created movies, they're like, oh, what you can do with a camera that you can't do when you're sitting in an audience watch a play is you can get a close-up, and you can have different angles, and you can do multiple takes, and you can do all of these things. And so that was immediately my approach. It was like, okay, how do I take the essence of what I do, but how do I think about it in a way that I haven't thought about it before? And so I got this camera, and I locked myself in a room in my basement, and I said, okay, my vision was I want to create Netflix, like a Netflix quality program, but it's like the person is talking back to you in real time. So that was this vision that I had. It's like Netflix, but the person is talking back to you in real time. So obviously I had to learn about cameras, I had to learn about lighting, I had to learn about audio, I had to learn about how do you sort of rewire the back end of Zoom or whatever platform so that it's not kind of like bad music quality, it's high music quality. And I just had 3-4 weeks staying up till 6 a.m, night after night after night, doing all of this. And I actually booked myself my first event April 10th. I was like, I have to figure it out by then. And lo and behold, just that sense of urgency, that sense of having this vision of what I wanted, and then just working backwards from how I would be able to create that, I slowly but surely built this studio setup. I'm not in front of it right now, but built this studio setup with like multi-cameras, and I created a product that people felt like, oh, wow, this is a new kind of a product. I took all of the ingredients that I had from my keynotes, which is, music and emotional connection and all connectivity, all of those things, but I transferred them into this new medium. And by the time the fall of 2020 hit, every single month since then has actually been the best months I've ever had in my business, which was kind of amazing because I was in that moment where I thought I had lost everything. So for me, there's just a lot of lessons that I take away from that of hey, okay, sometimes when we get faced with these challenges, we have to kind of be willing to look at things from a different angle. We want to carry forward those things that we know are the essence of what we do. We know that these are the things that matter the most, but sometimes we have to be flexible as to how we present those things, or what changes about what we're doing, so that we can still carry that essence forward no matter kind of what the world or the challenges are presenting to us. So I really feel like part of how that was really developed, as I mentioned, was through this life of having to create a show every night, going from city to city to city, country to country, town to town, and figuring out like, okay, no matter what, whether there's one person, whether there's 100 people, whether there's 1,000 people, people have hired a babysitter, they've taken the bus, they've taken their night, they've taken their hard-earned money, they've come here for me to give them something. It's my job to deliver something to these people. And so that was just kind of nurtured in me from thousands and thousands and thousands of hours on stage, and I've really carried that forward in my sort of entrepreneurial speaker life. So there you go. That's my story.
I like your story. That was a good story. We'll ask you some more questions on all of that very shortly. We're going to move over to Sonia. So can you tell us a little bit about your journey that you've been on with passion and grit and resiliency, and how that's helped you as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, it's been quite interesting because I'm going to kind of, in one sense, start in the middle to kind of, and then I'll work backwards in that sort of thing. My entire life has been about grit, passion, and resiliency. And I remember a poignant moment. I'm going to start here because I think it sums up everything beautifully. As you saw from my bio, I'm a former broadcast journalist, a reporter and anchor. I started out in Northern Ontario. I remember being in Sault Ste. Marie as a photojournalist. And what that means is that you're doing everything. You're doing camera work, you're doing your editing, you're reporting, you're doing everything. Okay, so I was there for 2 years, and I said, okay, it's time for me to leave, right? I've been here now, and I'd like to move on. So the way it works in the industry, most people go to a C market, which was Sault Ste. Marie. They go to a B market, which may be Sudbury or Winnipeg, or they go off to, then they move over to an A market, which of course in Toronto is an A market, Calgary, Vancouver, and so on and so forth. So anyways, my boss said to me once, Sonia, you're going to be an anchor. And I said, okay, that's nice. But for me, it was always about being in the field because I really loved people and being out there. So I knew those anchor skills were extremely important, but to me, the love of the story, you could achieve so much more out there than behind the desk. So, I put my feelers out. I'm sending out tapes like you did before. And then I'm hearing a little birdie says, you know what, you are being sabotaged. You're having opportunities taken away from you. And I'm thinking like, are you kidding me? I call up my dad. I'm so upset. I'm crying. He's like, okay, wait a minute here. What do you need to do? I said, I need to get in front of these people. He's like, okay, you let me know when. So, I look at where I want to go. I start making phone calls. I called the news directors in Winnipeg and Edmonton and Calgary and started cultivating relationships with them over several months. And what that looks like is, you got to make sure, hey, you put together the stories that you've worked on over the course of the month, you send them to the news directors, they give you feedback, and then you're like, okay, and then you implement the feedback, right? And so I did that for several months, month after month, story after story, working on the voice training, working on the performance, working on the camera work, right? Everything, the editing, because it's all a package. They don't care if you sound good, but if everything around you looks horrible, you're back to square one. So it's working on every facet of that story to make sure that you catch their attention and they say, wow, this person's coachable. So several months passed by. I book the flights. First of all, I call and say, hey, I'm going to be in town. I'd love to meet with you. And of course, they're saying, absolutely, Sonia. I mean, because over months we've been talking and they've been seeing the progress. So then all of a sudden, book the 3 flights, Winnipeg, Edmonton, and Calgary. 2 days on my weekend fell on Monday and Tuesday. So then I go in, I meet with all of them. Now, fast forward 6 months later, I'm promoted to reporter and anchor in Sudbury. So I'm now anchoring and I'm getting all that great experience, anchoring the news and reporting in the afternoon. So then a year after that is a news directors conference, which is a big national conference, right? Everybody's there from across the country. I go there and I leave out of there with 3 job offers, one Ottawa, one Calgary, and the other one, 2 in Calgary, CBC, CTV, the other one in Ottawa was kiboshed. So I walk into the boss's office and I say, I'm leaving. I've got a job in Calgary. He looks at me and he says, how did that happen? How did that happen? Okay, so you know what's kind of interesting about that when I say that is you have to understand that, while I was waiting, I created the opportunity and the space to jump 3 markets in a year and a half to make up the lost time of all the sabotage that was going on behind the scenes, right? You know that in every industry, there are gatekeepers, and these gatekeepers have lots of money, they've got resources, so they can pick up the phone and make things happen, or they can flatline things like that, right? So your job is not to sit there and whine and cry about it, it's to figure out, how am I going to get around these people that are there? Let them think that things are moving smoothly and you're, making things happen behind the scenes. And that's how, one of my first real, true, stories about grit and resiliency. I worked so hard to get into that business. I don't come from money. I don't come from connections. My family is not well educated. My mother went back to school at the age of 40 to get her high school. You know what I mean? I had to pick up the phone to get into a business that few people get into and take risks by going up to a smaller town, not understanding, am I going to get out of that town? To go on to a CTV and then to onto a CBC. But what I did learn over the course of my time is that if you don't strive, if you're not hungry, if you don't outwork the other person, you don't constantly take every opportunity as a teaching moment, you're going to be left behind. Especially, I know I'm going to be in front of people who do not look like me. They have connections. How am I going to prove that I'm worth their time, right? That takes practice, 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 undying will, drive, unbelievable drive. And I think that seed was planted in me when I was the age of 6. I overheard someone say that Sonia, she's not smart. She's not smart. She's not going to make it to university. I know somebody else is going to make it, but it's not going to be her. And I think that was a seed that was planted in me to the point where I became almost fearless, and I used that to take me to Germany, where I studied German at the University of Cologne, got into the university there, and was able to learn some Italian and anthropology and land an internship at RTL, which is a large broadcaster in Europe, right? If I hadn't gone there, I wouldn't have understood that, whoa, I'm interested in media. I really like people. And that's something that, I've always been open to people giving me advice and suggestions, and then working on that and letting that percolate and simmer, right? And then making my decisions. So if I hadn't gone to Germany, I would have never gotten the idea that perhaps I could become a journalist, because somebody said to me, you know what, you might really succeed in media. You should think about that. And I was like, whoa, okay. But I don't want to do fluff news. I want to do news. So I came back, really worked hard, got into the business, and, along the way, multiple challenges. And then, of course, when you're working hard and, things get in the way, ADHD really, truly affected me. Just imagine you're making mistakes. Most people do behind the scenes in front of a few people. My mistakes were made in front of thousands of people, in terms of having to pick up because I can't remember, I can't focus, right? Having to figure out, how am I going to make sure that when I'm forgetting things, that I can trigger something in my brain to remember. All of that level of training has been able to now take me to redistill, and be able to use that to overcome obstacle after obstacle after obstacle. So when I think about passion and resiliency and grit, I've had to do that my entire life, because I've been underestimated my entire life, right? So that's a bit of part of my story. And we can talk about mental wellness and how that all happened if you want to ask me about that. You want to ask me about that, Nikki?
Yeah, that's great, Sonia. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
You're welcome.
So, Tarek, it's now your turn to tell us your story.
Awesome. Thank you so much for
Excellent.
having me, everyone, Mickey and the team. It's been really an honor. And sorry, I was a few minutes late, technological issues. It's awesome when it works, but here I am with you. So thank you for having me. And Sonia and Peter, amazing stories. Thank you so much for leading the way to me to tell you my story, which is, I hope that it's going to give you some kind of insight about how to appreciate your own journey and how to appreciate your own story, because every one of us really have something to contribute. I'm not really quite sure if a lot of you remember when Canada started opening up the doors for Syrian refugees in 2015, 2016. So my family was among the very first few Syrian families to arrive here in this country. I was the first Syrian guy to arrive in Antigonish, where I'm speaking to you today. And my mom was still back in Lebanon. She texted me, she called me Neil Armstrong at that time. You know, I was like the first guy, the first Syrian man to arrive in Antigonish. So I was like a big deal. But I think if I want to reflect on the topic of resiliency and grit, what I want to share with you is that I want to go backwards in history into our story back in Syria and how did we lose everything and how we came to Canada. But at the beginning of the pandemic, people started asking me, would you go back to Syria and live a war, or would you rather live in a pandemic? Like, if you were to choose between two crises, which one would you choose?
That's a big question.
And then I said in 2013, during the war that destroyed our lives, that ripped our family apart, that killed many of my family members, that absolutely had left nothing for us. We were forced to leave our homes. We were forced to leave our houses. We were forced to leave our country. In 2020, during the pandemic, we were asked to stay in our houses. We were asked to stay safe. You see the difference? And then I started saying that life is all about perspective. Yep. And then I said, I will take the second. I will take a pandemic. I will take 10 pandemics over a war. Yep. Because if you are staying home, if you are following the rules, you are staying safe. And you know that there are no rules in war. You know that there are no restrictions. You know that it's not about lockdown or staying in your home. No, you know that you can count down to death and you can lose and your family at any split of the moment. What I wanted to share with you is that in 1986 was the year when my family started the chocolate business in Syria. It was actually after my father graduated as a civil engineer in Damascus. He went to my grandmother and he told her that he's no longer passionate about being a civil engineer. And she asked him, what are you going to do? And my grandmother told him, you can't do anything now. She paid his tuition and everything. She was like, why are you changing your mind right now after you graduate? And she was like, I'm not passionate about being a civil engineer, Mom. So my dad went to my cousin's wedding. He saw everyone at the wedding was eating chocolate and was happy. And then he said, everyone eats chocolate will be happy. No one eats chocolate will ever be sad. So, and that's so true, and then he came back home to my grandmother. He started playing in the home kitchen how to create chocolate from scratch, although he couldn't make 2 fried eggs in the kitchen at that time. He absolutely was a terrible cook. But then he went to the library. He picked up like 2 books from the library. He started learning about every culture. How do they make their chocolate? How do they eat their chocolate? How do Egyptians, Koreans, Turkish, Americans, Belgians, Germans, how do everyone make their own chocolate? And then he came up with his own recipe. My father was not from an entrepreneurial family. He started that by himself. And then he built actually 2 chocolate stores outside of the home kitchen after my grandmother kicked him out of the house at that time. And then he got to meet my mother and they fell in love after he gave her chocolates. She tasted the chocolates, some of the best you would ever really think about, the gold dark milk chocolate, ruby, filled with roasted pistachios and hazelnuts and almonds and dried seeds. Something was so mouth-watering, even me hearing the story of their love, how it started. It was so interesting. So I grew up in that family. I grew up in a family that really loved to create happiness, loved to create impact, loved to spread chocolate, give away chocolate for everyone. My father was going up in Damascus, giving away chocolate to people on the public transit. Who does that? Like, he just wanted to open a connection with everyone through a piece of chocolate, which was really sweet. So growing up in that culture of spreading happiness and spreading joy and just living there in safety and peace before the war has contributed so much to my values. But also we took peace for granted. We took resilience for granted. We took all the values that has actually been part of us for granted. 2011 was the year when the war started. It was after the movement that started in the Middle East for Arab Spring. People were asking for reforms in the government. There was too much corruption everywhere. But in 2012, the war reached Damascus, our city. And Damascus is, by the way, the most ancient inhabited city in the world. And it goes back to over 12,000 BCE. So being from that part of the world really contributed a lot to how Syria welcomed so many people over history. But we didn't know that we had even to lose everything and to leave our homeland. But in 2012, and this is really the real story of struggle, and that's really what contributed to us to leave the country. When the war reached Damascus, me and my family, we were in our building, and we started hearing explosions around the building. Having the supper at that time, we ran into the basement. We had 10 floors. We ran into the basement. We stayed there for 5 nights without water, without medicine, without food, without anything, without any basics. Sometimes actually we ran out of oxygen. And on the 6th night, I told my family, we cannot just sit there, wait for death. We are much more of human beings than just sitting there in a basement waiting for our death, because we still have a lot to live for. We rushed out of the building. My entire family now are scattered around the world. Since 2013, we lost our factory that my father built, which had around 500 employees. It was the second largest chocolate factory in the Middle East. It was bombed by the most powerful explosion in the Syrian war. And actually, I was on my way to become a physician, but we left the country in 2013. We became refugees in Lebanon. And being in Lebanon at that time had given me the opportunity to a little bit settle down and reflect. And reflection is the most major part of resilience. If you want to be resilient, I think you have to understand what your values are. Your values are also about 2 things. Whether you play the role of a victim during a crisis, or whether you play the role of a victor during a crisis. You cannot do a third one. You have only 2 options. And you can only sit down and complain and say that you can't do anything, or you can dig down and find solutions. So even when we lost everything in the war, then I said, but we did not lose our skills and our talents. This is something the war or a crisis does not take away from you, right? This is something that became part of us. By the end of 2014, I got, actually, I was in a taxi, and that's why I'm in Canada. I was in a cab, and the cab driver told me about Canada for the first time. I'm like, he said, you should immigrate. You should travel to Canada. You should take your family with you. And you know that cab drivers, they talk a lot. Like if you are with them for a short drive, they keep you for another 20 minutes to tell you another story. So the guy was telling me all about Canada, and I really didn't know anything about the country before. So I applied for a scholarship to come here for it. And then the embassy was so impressed, so they invited my family with me. And I went home and told my family, hey guys, we're traveling, we're going to Canada. And they said, but Canada is too cold. You know, within 6 months in 2015, I was on a flight. I came here to Canada, and my family followed me after 2 weeks. We started the business again here in the town of Antigonish after Canadians opened their hearts and their homes for us. We were so thankful that we said we did not come here to take jobs or to take away from anyone, but we came to Canada to create them. We came to Canada to contribute. And somebody came to me and he said, well, why did you come to Canada to take our jobs? And I said in 2016, well, why we did not come here to take jobs. We came here to create them. That's why we are here. This is really the sole purpose of giving back to the country that has given us a lot. So resiliency is a big topic. You know, we started a company, we called it Peace by Chocolate in Antigonish, and now we are a national brand. We are also planning on exporting. Our goal is to become one of the top 5 chocolate companies in Canada within the next few years. We have big goals, but for any details on the story, there is a book that details all about the immigration story of our family. But also there's a movie called Peace by Chocolate. Hopefully would be on major streaming platforms by the end of the year. So make sure this is your holiday movie with your family. Watch it. And what's exciting as well is that Peace by Chocolate now has many projects for giving back to Canadian Mental Health Association, homelessness management with Phoenix Youth Programs in Halifax, Refugee Hub, and many Indigenous communities. At the end of the day, what I said during in topic of resiliency is that being stuck is not a setback. In the pandemic, we felt stuck. Being stuck is an opportunity to grow. You can use that time to grow. You can use that time to reflect. What happened during the pandemic is we lost a lot of our business for sure, like many other people. But what we did is we have, started to recover. And then we decided that this is the time for us to open a flagship store. And we did it. We just opened a flagship store in downtown Halifax on the waterfront just in March this year. And we have very exciting plans. So I'm really looking forward to answering any questions about that. But really, I'm excited about the topic. And I really feel that I hope people are reflecting on those who are suffering more during the crisis, more than just sitting in their homes with their kids. Although there are many, many things to be appreciating during the pandemic, that we have more time to spend with our families and to spend them safe. And really the quote that inspires me the most, I'm going to finish there, is what my friend said to me, is that no one can go back and start a new beginning, but everyone can start today and make a new ending. So we can start today and determine our ending. So thank you so much again, Mickey and the team, for having me.
Oh, thank you for sharing that story. And I don't know about anybody else on this call, but from the few of the comments that have been coming through, I think we would all agree that Peace by Chocolate is definitely well loved by many of us. So that's.
Oh, we already have customers in the audience. That's great.
You already have customers in the audience. Absolutely. In fact, I got my order this week in, and I will tell you, it is absolutely delicious. So I can concur with the rest of the world when we're going to be demanding and knocking on your door for more. That's for sure. But wonderful. The 3 stories, absolutely fantastic, and I knew that they would be unique and still very detailed and similar in some ways. So thank you to all of you. So we're going to a few questions were provided ahead of time from the people on the call. So if that's okay, I'll start with a couple of those while everyone starts to think. If you do have questions in the audience, feel free to put them in the chat box or write directly to either Diana or to Jordan, and we'll try to get to everything the best we can in the time we've got. So I'm going to start with a really interesting, there was a few questions that came in around which ingredient. So we talk about grit and resiliency and passion. If you could only, focus in on one of the 3, and I think you've kind of answered this already, which is the most important for your daily routine in your business? Any of you can answer, or all of you can answer, whichever.
I'm happy to jump in on that one.
Sure.
And this is sort of a tool that I've been developing, I would say, in the last couple years of my life, but it has become foundational, and that is the realization that whatever it is that I'm doing, whatever I'm creating, whatever project I'm taking, like whatever that might be, the most important thing is, what state am I in as I'm trying to do all of those things? And as I think on that, my tool to make sure that I'm in the right state has been this connection to presence and mindfulness. And so before I take a call with a big client, before I do a big talk, before I do whatever, I recognize that the most important thing is to put myself into a grounded place where I've taken. Sometimes it's a breath, sometimes it's a little mantra, but anything I can do to put myself in that state of presence and connectedness is going to impact whatever it is that I'm trying to do.
Wonderful. Tarek, Sonia?
I think for me, I really think that resiliency is as I mentioned, is a big ingredient, but you need something to attach it to it, which is compassion and empathy. Mm-hmm. If you attach compassion and empathy to resiliency, I think this is really the magic success. And to be honest, we all need inspirations in our life. And the biggest inspiration for me is this country and how welcome and open and kind everyone has been to each other during the pandemic. So we can use that even in our daily lives. Just take an example, my community here in Antigonish, when everything was going well in 2016, there was no pandemic, but they thought that me as a human being 8,000 kilometers away suffering is too much for the world to handle. So they took that on themselves, although they didn't know me, but they really wanted to support, and they opened the doors and their arms and they embraced us all. So I truly believe as well that the pandemic has unveiled, I think compassion goes to employers as well these times. We are talking about a crisis in the country right now for employment and etc. So I think the pandemic has unveiled the employers who believe that their team and their people are their biggest asset, and those who just say it, right? You have to believe that your people are your biggest asset. So I truly think compassion can go a long way. It's not only about surviving our businesses. It's a wrong theory if we just believe that yes, the companies are making it at the end of the day, healthy financial statements, healthy cash flow, etc. But what matters at the end is the people. If we are losing people, then we are losing ourselves. So caring a lot about the people, at the same time the planet, and making good products. These are the three, I think, recipes for success for me.
Yeah, wonderful.
And for myself, it's passion.
Yeah.
I think passion leads to the other two. For me, especially in my life, me passionate about the story made me want to eat, sleep, and breathe that. And do everything I can to make sure I'm able to tell stories that people love, and even, be able to take that and take it away from the former career and bring it into this company, right? The passion for trying to remove those barriers for people so they can get the information that they deserve to know, right? That's what we're doing in We Distill. So for us, it's called We Distill. We distill together information, right? By sharing knowledge, creating the level of increasing the level of transparency, so people can learn more and shop together with that level of confidence, knowing that when they put their money behind something, they know that it's something that they believe in and they're happy about. So for me, if I didn't have that passion, I wouldn't have the grit or the resiliency to be able to go the distance to try and realize that dream.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is where it all kind of intersects so beautifully, when you have that passion and the grit, and you have this inner kind of like resiliency to get through things. You're getting through things that you're passionate about. So they tie quite nicely together, but they're, as you all mentioned, there's kind of something that drives you a little bit more than another one, but they play really well together, all in the same kind of playing field. So that's great. Thank you. So the next question, there was quite a few about coping mechanisms. So Peter, you mentioned kind of taking a breath, and we've talked a little bit about mental resiliency and stuff as well. Is there specific coping mechanisms you have that can kind of get, if you find yourself going into negative places or something that's not working for you, how do you snap back into it? How do you get back into positive way of thinking? How do you cope through the lower kind of times? Anyone?
Okay, I can start. I think reflection is really important. Journaling is extremely important, especially because you can always flip those pages back and see where you've come from and see where you are now. And that's always been a great comfort. Also, too, surrounding yourself with good people that you can talk to is so important. And taking time for yourself, so even watching a program in a way that takes your mind off something really extremely helps me,
Yeah.
And then I can, I can bounce back from that.
Wonderful. And Peter, you talked a lot about reflection and breathing. Is that kind of when you see yourself kind of slipping into a more not so positive kind of stance? Is that kind of, you just take a step back as well? What is it you do?
Well, I think what it is actually developing the practice, because by the time you're in the crisis moment, it's like, I'm not saying it's too late, but you want to build that muscle on the daily so that it's there for you when you're in the moment of crisis. Then you have a little bit more spaciousness around it. Like if you've developed a practice of connecting with yourself, connecting with your breath, doing a self-love meditation, a compassion meditation. I do this meta meditation, which is, you say to yourself, may I be free from peace, and may I be free from pain and suffering, and not free from peace. May I be free from pain and suffering. oh my gosh, I say this every day and I'm blanking on it. But you're wishing yourself to be free from pain and suffering, filled with loving kindness, and to meet each moment with an open heart. So I wish that to myself, and then I wish that to others. And this is like this daily practice. So then when you're in the moment where you're in the crisis and you're feeling the overwhelm, which I won't speak for anybody else on the panel, but I know from my experience, anybody who's an entrepreneur, you're living a little bit in this different lane. You're trying to do something that you're passionate about. There's no set paycheck, there's no set hours, there's no guarantee that it's going to work. It often doesn't work, and you have to reimagine things. And so it's just fundamentally, you are going to have those moments where you're knocked down, and you want to have built up that muscle so that in those moments, if you've been able to say to yourself every moment, every morning, like that you're wishing yourself compassion, that compassion is more readily available to you when you need it. So I think just foundationally practicing those things, we call it like a yoga practice or a meditation practice. You're literally doing it habitually, is such an important way of thinking about it. And then there's also remembering that we're just human beings, that we're trying to do all these things. We have these ambitions, we have these dreams, but we are these organisms that require basic care in order to do all these things that we want these bodies to do.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful.
I agree totally with Peter about that. The about entrepreneurship and really how does it set your mindset to be much different. They say that entrepreneurship is like jumping off the cliff and building a plane on the way down. So you have to figure it out to really build that plane. The other thing is, I think writing down helps a lot, for those who are living in a low moment. I think writing down what you're proud of, because you have to shift your mindset from being focusing a lot on the problem to focus on the solution, right? And the solution comes from the things you have accomplished before. And writing down what are the things you're committed for in the future, writing down what are the goals that you're setting for yourself. And again, use this moment of being down and feeling down to see the top of the summit, to see the top of the mountain. But always what we forget is, when we are looking for our goals, I think we see that summit, we see the lovely end, we see the outcome, we see that but we really forget the mountain, right? When we look at the top, we just don't see the entire mountain that we have to go through. So sometimes we just struggle really to get there. So I really think, building all of these foundations, as Peter said, certainly is helpful for me personally. I think writing down helps a lot, because it will get you to where you want to be, and it will shift your mindset.
Excellent. That's wonderful. There was a few on the theme of like rock bottoms, but I think we've talked a little bit about that. So I'm going to skip over the rock bottom questions, because we talked a lot about resiliency and getting through difficult situations already. So I think a really good one here that came in is, how do you explain your passion to maybe someone who doesn't quite see it? So maybe you're really passionate and excited about doing something and you think it's the right thing to do, but someone in your life is just not getting it. How do you get through that moment? Or how do you convince them that it's a good thing?
I think starting on the, if you are thinking about entrepreneurship, starting with how do you become unique and remarkable? Right? Like, this is really what drives your passion. Is if you are unique and remarkable enough. For example, when we came to Canada, and then we were saying to ourselves, well, why are we going to start even a chocolate company? There are a million out there, a million of them. Canadians don't need more chocolate. You can go to a store and you can really buy anything. But then we said, no, we have a very remarkable and unique value that people should hear about. People, so many times they take peace for granted. They don't want to celebrate it. People sometimes forget that without peace, no one can go to work. No one can build businesses. You cannot raise kids. You cannot do anything without it. I couldn't speak to you here today if I know that I'm not living in a peaceful place, right? It's not only the absence of war or the absence of violence, but really it's about how do we understand to appreciate the things that we don't see. It's really that value that we live through every day, but we do not see. And so many people forget that there are many others around the world that really are forgetful of the blessings that we live through. So many people even take the things that For example, having water, to drink, having power, having electricity, schools, education, healthcare, going to a hospital, calling 911 and finding a response. So many people around the world, they don't have this stuff.
Right.
So I really think that if we focus there and we start there, I find that really is going to drive your passion more, because you know that you're living in a place where I think your minimum is being met, right? So you really have to strive for better. If your minimum is met, then you have to strive for better. You cannot just settle there. And once you are striving for better, I think you're not only benefiting yourself, but I think you are benefiting the people around you, are benefiting your community. And never forget that passion also comes from the impact and the difference we are making into the world. So when we came to Canada, I think the first thing we thought to ourselves, how can we make the difference into the lives of the people around us? And that's why we started something called the Peace on Earth Society. So we built a business, but then we built another society where we donate proceeds of our profit by the end of each year to many other organizations, because we know that if you are successful, it's your moral responsibility to lift others to success, right? You cannot just be successful on your own. I think that's really one of the biggest assets that we have used to drive our passion.
Mm-hmm. I think sharing your passion as an entrepreneur is a big thing too, that really helps convince other people that you're passionate about the right things. The more you share your passion and talk about it with others. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I think no one is going to come and knock on your door and ask you what's your passion. Your first responsibility is you have to speak about it.
Right.
And then people are going to follow the lead. And I have actually a very close friend of mine who told me, since, I started the business, it was like, if it's not working, go networking. So, go
networking.
Yes, exactly. So networking is very important. Go networking, because that's gonna drive your, I think, your connections. People are gonna give to you. People are gonna share with you their passion. I think it's not only about you, then it becomes about us, and I think that's very important.
Absolutely. We tell people all the time, all of our entrepreneurs, that networking is such a big and important piece in their journey. So that's a good takeaway as well. Peter, did you have something?
Yeah, I guess I want to, and this is a bit of a newer learning in my life as well. I in some ways, I want to push back gently against the question, or from the idea of trying to convince others. Mm-hmm. I've spent many years of my life doing that. Certainly, like, the music business is built upon that, and trying to get a record label or an agent or a manager, or whoever to kind of pay attention. And something, a shift that I've been doing more recently in my life is actually, again, it kind of goes back to this notion that we're these human bodies, these human beings, and yes, we can do amazing things, but there are limits to our energy, and where do we want to spend that energy? And I just would so much rather spend my energy fanning the flames of the yeses versus spending any ounce of energy trying to convince somebody who doesn't see it yet. And to speak to Tarek's point, is if you live that passion, if you are in that, if you have a deep sense of purpose and motivation, and to be of higher service, to give back, all these things, like, other people, or the people that are drawn to that light will come along. I would just follow the yeses, even follow the easy yeses, which sounds like controversial, but really, if you have somebody who loves what you're doing, even if it's just one person, how can you super serve that person? Like, really just pour into that customer, that first customer, whoever it might be, really fan those flames and grow it from there. And a lot of my speaking work is a product of that, where people would come to my shows and they loved the stories that I told in between the songs as well. And so the energy that I spent, like, beating down on the record label or whatever, trying to be like, no, like I, trying to get them to think that I was cool enough to be on their label or whatever, when I'm this sort of earnest person who likes to storytell and likes to connect with people, I found this whole other world where that was welcome and loved and appreciated, versus you're not cool enough. So spend your energy where the yeses are, where you feel energized versus draining that precious energy that you have trying to convince anybody. That's my feeling on it.
I love it.
And just to add to that as well, Mickey, I completely agree with Peter. I do. I think that when you spend your energy trying to convince people over here, you're losing your eyes and the focus on what you should really be focused on, and that is trying to advance, which is trying to build relationships and making those smaller wins. So those people in the background who are saying, "Oh, this is not going to work," and then they see that, wait a minute here, she's getting contracts signed. Okay, like I can say that, when people hear that We Distill is a marketplace, it's an innovation on a marketplace, and it's in the beauty and wellness space. But the first thing they think is, well, marketplaces don't ever work because you got to get the supply side to get the demand side, or the demand side to get the supply side. And it rarely ever happens. And, why beauty? There's so many players in the industry. Well, people start to pay attention when they say, have you had any traction? Well, we just signed an online store that we're about to, onboard, over 80 SKUs, or we just signed, 10 brands. One of them is in the detox market. The other one is in Credo. And it's not, they're not IOUs. They're actually, you see the percentage of the fees on it and all of the terms and conditions. So they're like, oh, okay. So I think that sometimes it's, a waste of time to really try to convince people. It's about you working with the people who are believing in what you're doing and who want to be part of that. And then people will see the wins. They'll see the wins and then they'll want to join.
And I think that ties right back into this whole resiliency thing. When you've got it and you're focused on it and you're passionate about it and you're doing it for all the right reasons, then stay on track, stay and focused on what you're doing, and don't let the naysayers or the question makers or the negative people in your lives affect it. Just stay focused, and then eventually some of those people on the kind of sidelines who are creating all of the noise will eventually possibly be cheerleaders, because they'll see the success and see the good that you're doing and understand where you're coming from and learn from you. And I think that that's super, super important.
Mickey, I'm happy to add one more little nugget before I have to jump off. And also just want to say thank you to Sonia and Tarek and to Jordan, Diana, and you for organizing this. Amazing for everybody in attendance. I got a lot out of just being witness to it. But something that came to mind as we were talking about that last point is that, I think it's important for us to remember as entrepreneurs, as people that are sort of chasing these dreams, that foundationally, that is going to lead to more naysayers and more people sort of challenging you on that, because by doing what you're doing, you are challenging others. You're doing something that sort of people wish that they had the courage to do. And so that creates this scenario where by you chasing this light or chasing this dream or chasing whatever, some people are going to be threatened by that. And that's not to judge them, and we are not all sort of cut out for entrepreneurship. It's a choice. It's for some people it's not the right thing, and that's okay. But to understand that really what you want to be seeking out, because you also don't want to put yourself in a silo where you're like, I'm following my passion, I don't listen to anybody. What you want to do is you want to seek counsel, not opinion, right? So something like Innovation Expo and the mentorship program that you have, it's a beautiful example of you're seeking counsel. You're taking advice, recommendations from people who have maybe been on that road before you, who understand the unique challenges of what you're doing. That's where you want to take that moment and be like, okay, maybe I do need to rethink that. Maybe I need to change something that I'm doing. But you don't want to get that from just people's opinions, because often what you're doing is foundationally kind of disruptive to their sense of things. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you for that. That's great. And I see you popped back in. Did you come in to say something?
I just wanted to say thank you and well done, and I put it in the chat. And yeah, awesome.
Wonderful. Oh, thank you. Absolutely. We're super happy you all came here. Tarek, Sonia, do you have anything that you would like to add?
Well, what Peter says is 100% right. Absolutely. I mean, it's so important to understand when people are giving you advice or opinion, that where it's coming from and what the intention is behind that. So, it's important to understand, as there's a saying, how to pick sense from nonsense. It's
Yeah.
true. And then, you can place it where it belongs. And it's also very important for your mental health too, extremely, to know that it helps.
Yeah. Having good people on your side, finding the right people to talk to cheerlead, and the right dates. I often say the mentorship. Bye. We'll see you soon, Peter. Take care. Thanks so much. I often say that the mentorship, the role of a mentor is to kind of be this umbrella, right? Like on the rainy days, they have to provide the umbrella, and they're the rainbow, and they're the cheerleader, and they can bring the cheer when you most need it, in a very logical kind of way when it's needed. But they're also they kind of sometimes have to be that rain cloud, where they have to kind of rain on your parade once in a while and say, you know what, let's talk about this, and let's dream about this, and let's do things a little bit different. But their role is to guide and to direct as per what you want. And I find that is one of the most kind of interesting parts of mentorship, is finding the right people to fit and mesh, and that is what we try to do. So I'm happy that you see that, Sonia, and Tarek. I know that you've surrounded yourself with some really awesome people in Nova Scotia.
Yes, absolutely. No, I just want to say thank you for having me. It's been really an honor for me, and everyone who has been here. I would certainly love to take the conversation further. Please feel free to connect with me throughout my my social media channels. But at the end of the day, really, I joined here because I believe in sharing stories. We are living the age that we need to hear each other. We need to see each other beyond the book, beyond the background, beyond even their struggles or what they have been through. But really, sharing our story, I think, will connect us all together. And this is really an amazing platform. We're using technology to bridge ourselves with others instead of letting it be a barrier. And this is exactly what we are doing here. And thank you, Mickey and the team, for doing that. The last thing I want to mention is be kind. Be kind to yourself, be kind to the people around you, and because kindness can go a long way. I think without kindness, I wouldn't have been here today. Without kindness, I wouldn't even be able to come to Canada. We would have been in a much different position, triple suffering during even a pandemic and living as refugees. So I truly believe kindness is a way that can not only start with you, but it's like a snow ball, it can grow from there. The kindness is all about the little acts of kindness. I told you the story of my cab driver who told me about Canada, who I'm never going to meet again. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
But he would never know the impact he made in my life. Right. So always be kind even to a stranger. Commit to me today. You're going to go and do an act of kindness for a stranger to you. But other than that, it's been really a true honor. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to everyone on the call. Thank you, Sonia. And honestly, it really touches me that you joined us and shared all your stories with us. So we're going to release this at the Innovation Expo on October 21st, and I hope that all of you can join us. You can register; it is free to attend. And we will put a link to the registration page below. And if you haven't, I would love for you to do that. We're going to release it, watch people react, and get back to all of you in the next little while with some invites and some treats and some definitely some social media peeks into this conversation, because it's been so absolutely wonderful. And like I said, I'd like to keep you all afternoon, but I can't. So I wish you all well. But I did just want to say thank you so much to the three of you, and also just absolutely, I could sit here and talk to the three of you all afternoon. You shared so much with us, and I really, really do appreciate that. And I hope that it has been helpful to everyone on the call here today. Also wanted to send out a big special thank you to our Expo sponsors. So Invest in Guelph, Tech Adaptica, University of Guelph, Innate.ai, TD Bank, Ernst & Young, Sengen, Startup Canada, Meridian, Fill It Forward, County of Wellington, and of course Sign Language Interpreting Associates of Ottawa. I want to give a virtual kind of high five to my Expo coordinators, both Diana and Jordan, and also to the CEO of Innovation Guelph, Antoner Fung. We're working really hard on putting together this Innovation Expo, so hoping that you are loving every moment of what we're doing, and I really look forward to hearing all your feedback. So Jordan's going to pop a feedback link into the chat. Please give us some feedback on today's session. Let us know how you enjoyed things, what kind of things you'd like to see from us in the future. But absolutely, I do wish you a wonderful afternoon, and I thank all of you for joining us. And I hope to see y'all again real soon.